PSTA, as a transportation provider, there's a federal law that requires us to drug test all of our safety-sensitive employees. Our bus drivers and mechanics we have to provide different kinds of drug tests for those positions, including pre-employment and a random drug testing process. And this has been around for 30 years, and we do that. Our policy at PSTA, which the board approved some 20 years ago, is considered a no-tolerance drug policy, meaning if you test positive for drugs and you're a bus driver or mechanic, you are terminated from PSTA. It's basically no questions asked, you're terminated. So for a long period of time, nationwide, the requirement on how many of our employees we have to randomly drug test in a given year is set by the federal government, set for the whole country, and it was 25%. That transportation agencies like ours, we had to randomly drug test 25% of the employees on a given year to meet their requirements. And that was fine. And PSA has not had a serious problem with a lot of people testing positive or anything like that. That's not the case. I don't know this for a fact, but I think because a number of states around the country have approved of use of marijuana, and states have approved medical marijuana and lots of other additional drugs, the federal government, as of January 1st, 2019, increased the random drug testing to 50%. From 25 to 50%. We have to randomly drug test 50% of our bus drivers and mechanics starting 2 months ago. So far we've randomly found one person, one employee test positive, and they were terminated per our no second chances policy. Because of this significant increase in the number of random drug tests, our union has asked us to take a look at the policy and maybe change the no tolerance drug policy to a, hello, welcome, to the kind of drug policy that is known as a second chance policy. Instead of terminating any employee that tests positive, instead we would make them go through a drug treatment, and then they would be subjected to maybe up to 5 years of additional random drug testing to ensure that they were clean. I think it's important whenever a policy is 25 years old that maybe it's important to look at, to look into whether that policy needs to be changed. But this was an issue that the PSTA board approved, and there were some board members that were very strongly of the mindset that we needed to have a no tolerance drug policy. Trish has already started looking into this and getting some data on some other transit systems, so I would like her to just give you a little bit of the lay of the land as far as she knows it right now.
Sure. So we have gathered comparative policies from agencies throughout Florida, throughout the U.S., and so far about half of the ones that we've collected offer a second chance treatment option, and about half of them don't. We do see that there's quite a variety in the way those agencies that do offer a second chance option, there's a variety in the way that they do that. So we're looking now at how different agencies have taken an opportunity like this and made it work for their agency. So that's where we are right now. We're in sort of this phase one of information gathering, and we'll be synthesizing the differences between them and looking at what the options could be if we decided to go that route.
Patty? Comments? Thoughts?
I just want to know if someone does test positive for whatever drug, alcohol it is, and we give them a second chance, what is our liability?
None. No change. That's what I want to emphasize, that our number one commitment is the safety of our service, safety of our customers. So when we talk about a second chance, we assure through testing, through continued testing, that there's nobody on drugs that's driving our buses. Under the way we ensure that now is we don't do any extra testing; they are just fired. The way we would do it under second chance policy is they have to go through a whole random. I mean, they're required to do testing on a regular basis to make sure that they're clean.
They would be removed from safety-sensitive work immediately, and they wouldn't return to safety-sensitive work until they passed a drug test. So they may spend an elongated period of time out of the role, working with a substance abuse professional, and they wouldn't return until they were clean and had gone through the protocol that was recommended by the substance abuse professional. And then, as Brad said, for up to an additional 5 years, the program would include not only being subjected potentially to the randoms that are done on 50% of our pool, but an additional level of scrutiny, additional random drug tests specifically for that.
So right now, you're in the research phase.
Exactly.
And you'll come forward with recommendations
Yes,
when you
ma'am.
get your work completed, correct?
So safety sensitive position includes driver.
Yes.
Drivers and mechanics.
Driver and
Drivers,
mechanics.
mechanics,
So
yeah.
we have other places to shift them. Well, I guess we're hoping the volume won't be that much.
Right, no, I mean, we have different ways that we could consider this, but what most agencies do is have them just completely off of work in an unpaid status, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, now that we have a quorum, correct? We can
Yes.
vote. Do you want to go back and approve the February minutes?
Move approval.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Okay, Brad, do you want to talk about the board agenda?
Yes, it's a relatively light agenda for the March meeting so far, but I think that will change somewhat based on some of the conversations we just had in our legislative committee. In addition to the contracts that you see listed so far, we're going to be giving a couple more presentations. Specifically, Cassandra is going to be giving a presentation to the board on the different types of funding that are out there for PSTA and the pluses and minuses toward if we were to identify different kinds of funding, if it was capital, if it was restricted to just capital funding, like the bed tax, like Penny for Pinellas are, versus operating funds and the flexibility that operating funds provide, such as the gas tax or general fund, or maybe state funding, or certain kinds of funding that you can use for operations. I also think, based on the comments and questions that Commissioner Gerard and you and other board members asked at the last meeting, that we maybe give a little bit more information specifically about the PSTA financial forecast to the board in a easy to grasp way. I have a vision that Debbie doesn't know about yet, about how we, I thought about it this weekend, about a way we can sort of articulate in a better way our thoughts on the financial situation, how the list of service adjustments that we're proposing fits into that versus generating of additional revenue. Maybe as a stopgap measure for a few years might work, all that.
So, Brad, may I suggest, just for clarity and some more finite understanding, because I remember when I first started on PSTA, this budget is not easy to work through. I mean, if you're not Debbie. And my thought is, while you're going about and doing your debriefings with each individual board member, could it be possible that you would take Debbie with you and you could do just a little primer on? And try to maybe send out an email in advance, letting the board members know that you will be, during your debriefing, you will be bringing Debbie with you, and for them to please write down what they think their questions are. Then as you go through it, you'll be in a better position to get the answer to your question, because I find it very almost non-productive to have those type of one-on-ones back and forth during a regular board meeting, because for those of us that are on the board, it's very, well, I know Pat's a finance person, but I'm not, so I have to work really, really hard to understand all the budget stuff. I can only imagine what our citizens are thinking, who have no information about any of the background or how it all works and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So I think, I don't know, I'm just offering that as a suggestion. If my board members don't agree, then that's fine too, but.
Well, it's sometimes, if you don't have a background in finance, you don't even know what the questions are.
That's
Right.
So I don't, you know, I don't see us taking that off the general agenda, because we have board members,
No,
I'm
not
sure,
ta-
that don't know.
I'm not talking about taking it off the general agenda. What I'm talking about is you had very specific questions in the last board meeting. I was just having a really hard time following your question and Debbie's answer. But I would.
So was I.
But yes, I got that. But the point I'm making is, if I had those issues, then I'm sure I'm not the only board member that had those issues, and maybe it'd be better if we could all be a little more educated about the budget, and then we'd all be able to, am I making sense? I don't know. if
Well, I
you're-
think, yeah, I guess.
I mean, I just
I don't
think
know
of-
that it's, yeah.
I
Those
mean-
things are gonna come up in the board meetings anyway, but.
They are,
Yeah.
but then it's to me, if I had more information, it'd be a lot easier. It'd just be a lot easier than to try to hash that all out during a board meeting. Because if everybody did that, we'd never get through our meeting.
Right,
Do you know
I
what I
mean-
mean? Because I'm kind of thinking about how we handle it on the county commission. I mean, we go through each item that's on the agenda,
Mhm.
and sometimes there's a lot of budgetary questions that surface in our debriefings that we get answers to one-on-one, which makes it really clear overall.
Right.
That's all I'm trying to avoid, is just, because I'm working with, I think it's really important before we get deep into the budget and where we are and all these different options, that there's a clear understanding between you and Barry and Whit about what some of those options are, because I would not want to see what happened last year when we had our discussions on the board, came up with what we thought was a great exercise, and then all of a sudden, I'm getting this paper flashed in front of my face from the former administrator about, where did this come from? I don't know anything about this. And it caused a huge brouhaha with our county staff.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yes, I
Wasn't
mean,
pretty.
hopefully it won't go off the rails in some other way, but I mean, so far, we're having
And Barry
a
has
regular set of
committed-
meetings.
Barry has committed to continuing those, and
And the staff.
That wasn't
goes-
happening before, so.
The county staff and the
Clearly.
MPO staff are, we are meeting on a regular basis, the staff level as well. So-
and then,
Those are pretty high-level policy decisions too. It's not just budget, it's, you know,
correct. But
the county has never funded PSTA before.
Correct. It's
That's pretty big,
Here's, but
you know,
here's.
and it's also a black hole, so.
Yes, So, but here's an example. Here's an example.
Don't go by it, because that's where my question is.
But,
And how do we get there? How do I get
Well,
there? How do I
there-
understand that?
so here's a good example, Commissioner Gerard. One of the recommendations coming from PSTA was to take part of the gas tax.
Yes.
Okay? I don't think until Brad had the meeting with Barry and so on, that he understood where that money goes now and how
Right.
it's shared with our transit trust fund and the cities, right?
Right.
So for us to go and say, okay, well, we want a share of the gas tax, that now puts a real kink in our own budget. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely, I know what you mean.
Yeah, so,
But,
so,
yeah, that's why they're meeting.
that's right,
Because-
and that's what I'm saying.
And
I
that,
would,
and that's a source that's never gonna come up with enough money to,
correct. And it's
do
not
what you need anyway.
It's not sustainable either, it
Right.
only buys us a couple of years.
Right.
Let me jump in there to the gas tax question.
Right.
You know, the Florida League of Cities goes to what bills are up and what sources of revenue they have. And so for their finance taxation, what do you think they jumped on?
yes,
Yeah, the gas tax. And so, you know, Florida League gives us a list of every city, how much it gets in gas tax and how much it should and what we're gonna fight. So I'm sitting there going, "Ooh, the black hole. What is it? Why is it? How do we change it?
But
What do we
see,
do?" So I don't
I
know
don't-
either, Janet.
Well,
You
here-
guys know. I don't.
No,
I know
we
when it
don't
came,
necessarily know.
when it came time to build the number 4 station, Pinellas Park jumped in with $100,000 and the people that own the property, they jumped in with another $100,000 and the property to put it. And PSTA jumped in with $100,000. So I don't think that's ever happened before. Don't look for it to happen again.
But the thing is, Patty, in other parts of the state, don't get just like that. The Florida Association of Cities, they put that down over the whole state.
Right, there
But
they
the
go.
rest of the state doesn't necessarily divide up that gas tax like we do in Dallas.
Right.
That's
That's
a county
what I'm
commission
trying,
decision.
that's why I brought that up, Janet, because it is all different. And if they're
Right.
gonna jump on the gas tax instead of, my favorite, internet sales tax, that's gonna solve all our problems.
Well,
Pat, don't make taxes.
what if they ever did?
That's what I'm trying to say.
Right.
We're not all on the same page, we're
No.
all going in different
That's
directions.
why,
and-
that's why you have to really be careful when you start putting these statewide issues under an association that maybe they don't understand all the different formulas the different counties use.
Supposedly, they have, I think, the Florida counties, Florida League of
Yeah,
Counties
back.
Association.
I'm on that state board.
Do they even speak to each other?
Yeah, they
When
do.
it's necessary.
That's how we got Amendment 1 to fail.
All I'm saying is, Janet, we're all looking for money and we're all looking for solutions to problems.
Correct.
All of us in different ways. So talking about understanding the budget, where the money comes from, and what I asked Brad just a little while ago. So what can we be innovative and try to create so we can pull down more money for
Well,
us?
that's why we're having all these funding conversations, and there'll be another one, big one, in April. That's what they're shooting for, Brad.
Oh, okay, that's good.
Whit and Barry and us, hopefully.
Yeah.
Okay, so what else do you want to talk about?
But, I mean, like minds think alike. I think when we have our one-on-ones, Debbie will be joining me. And then some questions can be answered in that way. And then, you know, I'm sure it's nice sometimes to have questions at the board meeting, because then you're like, hey, I had that question too. I just didn't think of it when I met with Brad.
Right.
So then, yeah.
Well, and if necessary, we can sort of replicate the thing that I wasn't at, the transportation funding thing,
Yeah, in
not
April.
necessarily the whole thing, but
We're gonna do that in April.
well, hopefully
Again?
we will move,
Yes,
hopefully we'll
we
move
can.
beyond where it
No, I loved
started.
it. It
but-
was awesome.
Yeah, that's
It was the
We
best
didn't
thing
come up
I've
with
gone
a-
to.
We came up with all the issues, but we didn't really get the solution part.
Well, I'm saying, but the board, if there are people on the board that have never, well, I guess they'll see it too.
Well, they should have.
Maybe they can, well, I was out of town, and there are new people on there. That's all right. But I think we just have to continue moving forward, because we're already talking budgets, so,
I know.
for
Yeah.
next year.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's, and we've talked, that's probably the number one concern of mine, is just that the timing.
Right.
To just keep the momentum going. It's been very positive so far.
Yep. I think
So-
it'll stay that way. I mean,
Yeah.
Everybody's committed to making it work, so just keep on going. What else do you want to talk about in March?
That's what we'll be talking about in March.
That's what we'll be talking about, adding
Yeah.
an item.
Yep.
Yeah, and the thing that I have been talking to the administrator about is the possibility of a bridge loan to get us through that point in June where we would have to start doing layoffs. You know, kind of like we did for the construction licensing board, remember that?
Yeah, but why would it,
I don't know, I'm just,
I don't see it being a loan, because they couldn't pay it back.
but maybe they could. Depends on what we move forward to do.
Well, exactly. But like I said, that's a big policy issue.
They're all big issues.
Now,
Yes, I
are
know.
you talking
Yeah,
county or are
table.
you talking about PSTA?
Talking about county trying to provide funding to not have these layoffs and service cuts. Service cuts more than layoffs.
Yeah.
The other issue, which a couple of.
Well, that's why I
PSTA
was asking that specific question at the board meeting, like what actually does it take in the next year, because,
Yeah.
you know, $5 million is kind of a.
Big figure.
Right,
Pull it out
that,
of
that
thin
was
air
not
number.
well enough explained how we came up with that number.
I understand ongoing, that's what you think you might need to,
Yeah,
but even that's maintenance.
yeah, it maintains
Right.
our current status. A couple of board members, after the meeting, asked if PSDA, I don't think they had an opinion, they just wanted me to know, wanted my answer, whether PSDA wanted to take a vote to ask the county commission to do anything about the non-member cities. Do you have an opinion about that?
I do have an opinion about that.
Okay.
I would say, please don't do that. That is our problem to resolve, I think.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Well, it's our decision to make whether we put that on the ballot or not. And so if the board says, no, we don't want you to do that,
I would not.
I mean, it's really, right.
you know,
It-
or the board says yes and we're not quite ready to do that.
If we're gonna resolve it, how can you
I
resolve it?
mean, we're the ones that have to take the heat for putting a tax on the ballot, so, you know, don't.
I would not vote for it, so I hope you don't do that.
You wouldn't vote for it?
No, I wouldn't vote for it. I think there are other solutions.
I don't think Darden would vote for it.
Well, there was, now, I would say lots of different discussions. It was a good discussion at the board meeting. Some board members felt it wasn't worth it. Some, I would say, some board members seem like, you know, might as well. I mean, they're not on the
Yeah.
county commission, so they have no real, they're like, sure, go for it. That sounds good.
I don't think that's the county's
No.
role to do, and before we go piecemealing those kind of things, Brad, frankly, all those cities coming to the table, that doesn't pull us out of the ditch long-term.
No.
It doesn't help us to get to be the best and the biggest and the most effective, efficient transit operation. It doesn't do the job. So before we go asking one referendum after another referendum after another referendum, I think we have some work to do to figure out what the what the citizens will go for, and I already just talked to you about that, and I will be talking about it some more.
Okay. I had not planned on putting an action item for a vote by the PSTA board on the agenda.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think I'm sure there's mixed feelings on the county commission anyway.
Yeah. Okay, just checking.
Stay tuned.
We don't want to be the bad guys again.
Yeah.
We've worked too hard.
We're going to do what we can.
Well, we've worked too hard to make better relationships with all the cities to start now being a big hammer on the cities. That's not our role,
Well,
in my opinion.
I mean, it generates about the same amount of money as,
Yeah.
was maintenance
I mean,
from the county commission, so.
One suggestion, which my plan was to do so, would be to try to schedule meetings with the 3 PSTA county commissioners, just to make them aware, just to show them the same presentation, so that they know.
That would be good.
Because I don't think
Yeah.
they know.
Well, how would they if they're not
right.
here?
Right. So.
And I think
I think that's a
before,
good idea.
before we have more in-depth conversation at the executive committee level, this is really a very deep dive conversation on the finance committee.
Yes. Well, certainly the presentation that I'm envisioning that we would bring to the one-on-ones and to the board would go either the finance or the planning committee, yeah, beforehand.
And if you let us all know when that, because I don't keep track of when finance meets, but I'd be interested in sitting in on that,
Yeah,
just for kids.
we'll
Well,
do.
you're going to get the same presentation at planning. You're on planning, right?
Am I?
No?
No?
I don't
Then
know.
you're right.
Am I on planning?
No.
I didn't think I was. Thank you. for
But you're
trying to
on
give me
everything.
Another job. Jeez, Louise.
So, if I can interrupt, my big dream of the future is that just like Pinellas Park put in matching funds, if there is some way that we can work towards those goals of public-private, of the thing that you did in Tarpon Springs, public-private, and that will not solve anything for more than 3/4 of one day. I understand
Right,
that.
right.
I understand that fully. I'm just thinking that it certainly does improve our respect in the community, that we're not taking it all from the taxpayers, that who just quit building that thing on St. Pete Beach. I grew up there. The huge, not the Thunderbird, the other
Trade winds?
hotel. Trade Winds. That Trade Winds already is and does work to try to be a partner. That we have other businesses, we're
Do they?
growing, we have Gateway.
I don't see them trying to convince people to join PSTA.
I don't know if it could happen, but it certainly could be a goal that we have offered and tried to work with.
Well, I mean,
all
I
the
think we're
big
trying to do
players.
public-private partnerships
are.
or partnerships
Right.
with other governmental agencies, but I think in the long run, we need to look at a vision for what this county needs in
Thank you.
transit
Thank you.
and do what we need to get there, because,
Thank you.
you know, 5 million, 10
Band-Aids
million,
are
20 million's not, is not gonna do
Band-Aids
it.
aren't gonna do it. We have to really,
It's
and I
gonna-
think the time is now because there's so much momentum going on
Yeah.
in the transit arena.
And I think we can
And
do
changing
interim
BRT
things,
to
but-
RTS is one great big start. What was the result of the feedback you got when you got
Oh.
the consultants here?
What is
I don't know,
RTS
do you know?
again?
Did we tally up the
Rapid transit.
recommendations?
What?
I don't know if we've done a tally yet of the recommendations in our creative box.
Well, I've been taking my own poll throughout the region, and there's nobody that tells me they think that it doesn't bring into your mind a more futuristic, modern
Yeah.
day version of what we want it to be, right? Rapid transit service?
Right. Whatever that looks like.
Yeah, well,
A little mini train.
we're,
Don't say the
we'll
word
tally the
train.
information we got.
Wow.
I'm not kidding.
Trackless.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Even Jeff Brandis liked it.
He did.
He did.
There you go.
Excellent.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so I think we are. I think we're good, right? We're good.
Thank you.
Okay then. Thank you for joining us, Commissioner Gerard. It was great.
Sorry, I was late.
Well, I hope you didn't come down 102nd. It's impossible.
I did.
You did?
Well, some 40 minutes left. It's kind of a mess over there.
It's gonna be a mess until
Do you,
it
do you
gets
know
there.
if Pinellas County or Pinellas Park has a no tolerance drug policy or a second chance policy?
Ours is no tolerance.
I don't know.
I'm pretty sure.
Really?
I'll find out.
We can find out.
I just think the world is
All
kind of
right, well
changing.
then, we are adjourned.
I think-
Good of everybody,
Ah.
and I'll look
Especially if
forward-
they're agreeing to go to counseling or 5 months.
Yeah.
Or see, that's what special service people do.
What?
That's.
Give people something to do. That's us.
Have a great day.
Okay.
But sometimes it pays off, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Hey, are you getting all those emails?
Rotation.